All right, let's jump right into it because we have some absolutely mind-blowing breaking news to break down today. A U.S. military operation has, by all accounts, captured the sitting president of Venezuela. So, where did this all kick off? Well, it was a bombshell announcement from President Donald Trump himself on Truth Social. There was no lead up, no warning, just this declaration that has sent absolute shockwaves across the globe. I mean, let's just let that sink in for a moment. This isn't some back-channel diplomatic spat or a covert mission that gets denied later. No, this is the United States openly, publicly, claiming that it went into another sovereign nation and literally extracted its leader. This is, well, it's pretty much unheard of in modern history. Okay, so let's get into the details of the operation itself. What do we actually know about what went down?
Right. So who pulled this off? U.S. officials have confirmed to CBS News that the unit responsible was none other than Delta Force. We're talking about the military's absolute top-tier, most elite counterterrorism group. That fact alone tells you everything you need to know about how high stakes this mission was inside the Pentagon.
But here's the thing. A lot of the key details, they're still completely under wraps. Where is Maduro right now? How exactly did they manage to capture him? Both Washington and Caracas are being super tight-lipped, and it's creating this massive fog of uncertainty and fueling all sorts of speculation worldwide.
So, what was this actually like on the ground? For people living in Venezuela's capital, Caracas, this wasn't some distant news headline. No, this was happening right outside their windows, and it was terrifying.
And listen to this quote from a journalist there. It just paints a terrifying picture. She said her entire house was literally vibrating from the force of the blasts, with the sounds just echoing through the valley. It must have been a morning of absolute fear for ordinary people. And you can bet the Venezuelan government's reaction was fast and furious. The vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, was on TV almost immediately, demanding proof that Maduro and his wife were even still alive. At the very same time, the defense minister put the entire military on high alert, vowing to resist what they're calling an imperialist attack.
All right, let's flip the coin. What's the view from Washington? How on earth is the U.S. government justifying a move this big?
And this is so important to understand. This didn't just come out of nowhere. The U.S. has been building a case against Maduro for years. They've accused him and his top officials of running the Cartel of the Suns, a huge narco-trafficking organization. They also flat-out rejected his 2024 election win as illegitimate, especially after his main opponent was banned from running. And on top of all that, you have President Trump repeatedly claiming Maduro is intentionally fueling the U.S. border crisis. And this justification wasn't just talk. For years, the U.S. has had a $50 million reward on the table for information leading to Nicolas Maduro's arrest. So yeah, this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. It was the end goal of a very long-standing policy objective. So what's the official story from the White House? Well, according to Senator Mike Lee, who got off a call with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the message is this was not the start of a war. They're framing it as a targeted law enforcement action. They're saying the wider strikes were just to protect the team carrying out the arrest.
Okay, so to really get why this is such a monumental event, we gotta rewind the clock a little bit. How did tensions get so bad that U.S. Special Forces ended up raiding a presidential palace?
You know, the only thing that really comes close is when the U.S. captured Panama's leader Manuel Noriega way back in 1989. And you can see the parallels, right? Disputed elections, accusations of drug trafficking, it's all there. But, and this is a huge but, Noriega's capture came after a conventional invasion. This operation against Maduro was a direct surgical strike, totally different playbook.
And you can see on this timeline just how fast things went downhill. It started with strikes on boats out at sea, then came the hints over Christmas of a land strike, and get this. Just this week, Maduro was publicly saying he was open to talks. But as we now know, the window for dialogue had slammed shut. So, we've talked about the what and the how, but that brings us to the biggest unknown. The question that is going to define everything in the coming months. What happens next?
And this is the question on everybody's mind. Because look, removing a leader, even an autocratic one, is one thing. Figuring out what fills the power vacuum that's left behind, that is a whole different ballgame. And it's almost always unpredictable and incredibly messy. And right now, the experts are starkly divided. On one hand, you have the hope in Washington. They think this clears the path for the opposition, maybe figures like Maria Corina Machado, to take over and finally stabilize the country. But then you have the fear. The fear is that Maduro's loyal military and paramilitary forces aren't just going to step aside, which could plunge the nation into even deeper chaos.
And really, at the heart of this entire conflict are two stories that simply cannot both be true. From the U.S. perspective, they just took out the head of a criminal drug cartel. From the Venezuelan government's perspective, this was an act of imperialism by the U.S. to steal their oil reserves, which, remember, are the largest in the world. So that's where we stand. A president has been captured, a nation is in turmoil, and the world is holding its breath. The next few days are going to tell us if this incredibly audacious act leads to stability, or if it's just lit the fuse on an even larger conflict. The one thing we know for sure is that for Venezuela and for the world, nothing will be the same. Thanks for watching.